That night, I woke to the HOA president's fists pounding on my bedroom door, while Mom's laughter echoed from the living room. Her friends were over for the monthly Wine and Standards night, the one Karen Brennan insisted on hosting for community bonding. The music thumped through the floorboards, some upbeat playlist Karen had chosen to keep everyone smiling while she ruled Sunny Oaks, HOA, with an iron fist wrapped in pastel cardigans. I pressed my back against the wall, phone trembling in my hand, waiting for the door to give way. I thought Mom would protect me, her own daughter. But she didn't even pause her conversation. That's when I decided one day I'd make Karen regret ever underestimating me. My name is Emily Parker, and I'm 29 now, working as a trauma counselor at Haven Ridge Mental Health Center in Portland. But 7 years ago, on my 22nd birthday, I learned what true betrayal felt like inside our supposedly peaceful gated community. The music pulsed louder, Karen's signature laugh, cutting through it, all theatrical and loud after 2 glasses of Pinot Grigio. Her inner circle was there: Martha, the treasurer, Susan, the secretary, and the usual suspects whose voices blended into that fake happy chorus of HOA loyalty. I'd been in my room studying for my psychology finals when the first heavy footsteps creaked on the walkway outside. Karen. She'd been circling my house all day because I dared to send Mom that email last week, the one with links to state HOA oversight reports and the contact for a lawyer who specialized in embezzlement cases. The footsteps stopped right at my door. Emily, open this door right now. Her voice was thick with authority and that special Karen tone that somehow made every demand sound like she was doing you a favor. The knob rattled violently. I'd installed a deadbolt myself after the last courtesy inspection when she tried to cite me for unauthorized emotional support plant on my porch. But the wood around the lock was already splintering under her fists. I know you're in there, you little troublemaker, sending emails, trying to turn your mother against the board. My blood ran cold. She found it somehow, even though I'd used a burner account. The music upstairs got louder. Someone turned it up on purpose. Mom, I screamed, hoping my voice would slice through the party noise. Mom, please. Nothing. Just more laughter and the clink of glasses. I pressed into the corner between my bed and the wall, fingers fumbling with my phone. 911. I needed to call 911, but Karen's fist connected again, and this time I heard her crack. You think you can destroy our perfect community? She snarled. My community? The irony hit me hard. She'd spent years isolating anyone who questioned her, finding residents in a silence, controlling every blade of grass, every flag, every shade of beige siding, and she still called it our community. Another strike, the frame groaned, the deadbolt starting to pull free. Please, I whispered into the phone as the operator answered. 1947, Maple Lane, Sunny Oaks, HOA. The president is breaking down my door. Please hurry. The sirens were distant, but coming. Karen paused, her bloodshot eyes widening behind her designer glasses. But it was too late. The door burst open, wood fragments flying. There she stood in her perfectly pressed khaki skirt and HOA polo face red, and contorted her clipboard of violation notices trembling in her manicured hand. For a moment, we just stared. Then she took a step forward, and I knew my life in Sunny Oaks was about to change forever. Either I'd become another silenced resident, or I'd survive and make sure neither Karen nor Mom would ever forget this night. Looking back, the roots of that nightmare went all the way to the day Dad died. I was 9, building a snowman in our front yard when Mom came outside, face pale as the winter sky. Dad had collapsed at work, sudden heart attack at 38. For 3 years, it was just us. Mom grieved, threw herself into her bank job, climbing from teller to manager, teaching me women didn't need anyone to survive. Then Karen Brennan walked into our lives at the first HOA meeting after we moved to Sunny Oaks. She was the charming new president, recently widowed herself, or so she claimed, always requesting Mom's input on beautification projects. She brought wildflowers because she'd paid attention, remembered I loved astronomy, and showed up to our welcome dinner with a telescope. She's different, Emily, Mom told me, eyes bright again. She makes this neighborhood feel alive. At first, Karen seemed perfect. She attended block parties, helped with welcome packets, never tried to replace Dad, just offered to be the community mother. She took us to HOA luncheons, bought Mom little gifts, paid for neighborhood events. When Mom joined the board after a year, I was genuinely happy for her. The changes were so gradual, I almost missed them. First, Karen suggested Mom cut back her bank hours. "You're exhausted, Linda. Let the board take care of everything." Then why work at all? The HOA needs your full attention. Within 6 months, Mom had resigned. Next came the isolation. Karen would sulk if Mom made plans outside board meetings. "I thought we could review the new fence guidelines together," she'd say, looking hurt. Mom started declining invitations, book club became HO, and wine nights. Phone calls with old friends grew shorter, then stopped. Karen took control of the finances with practiced ease. "It's easier if I handle the dues and projects. You shouldn't worry about the numbers, dear." Mom's name disappeared from oversight emails. Credit cards for events were canceled and replaced with ones only Karen could sign. When Grandma left Mom a small inheritance, Karen convinced her to invest it in community improvements. We never saw that money again. By the time I turned 15, Mom had become a ghost of herself. The woman who once wore power suits now asked Karen's permission before planting anything in her own yard. The woman who taught me independence now apologized for speaking out of turn at meetings, for laughing too loud, for existing. I try to talk to her. "Mom, this isn't normal the way she controls everyone. She cares, Emily. She just has strong standards. I shouldn't provoke her. You're walking on eggshells. You don't understand adult neighborhood dynamics when you're older." That conversation ended with Mom in tears and me grounded for disrespecting the board. I learned to survive by becoming invisible. I stayed late at school, joined every club, studied at the library, slept over at friends' houses. My grades became my escape route. If I could get into college far away, I could break free. Karen seemed content to ignore me as long as I didn't interfere. We existed in the same neighborhood, but different worlds. She had Mom under her thumb, and that was all that mattered. But I watched, I listened, I learned the patterns of control, the subtle manipulations, the way she twisted everyone's reality until neighbors couldn't trust their own eyes. Without realizing it, I was preparing for war. The day I got my acceptance letter to the University of Washington, I thought I'd won. Full scholarship, dorms, 300 miles between me and Karen's poison. Mom cried, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of joy or something darker. "I'll visit." I promised, though we both knew Karen would make that difficult. "Be safe," Mom whispered, hugging tighter than she had in years. "Be free." I should have heard the goodbye. The day I left, Karen didn't even wave from her porch. Mom stood alone in the driveway, waving until my taxi turned the corner. She looked so small, so fragile, like a bird with clipped wings. My first year at UW was freedom. I majored in clinical psychology, focusing on trauma and coercive control. Professors thought I was passionate. They didn't know I was arming myself. I called Mom every Sunday at 2 p.m. when Karen was supposedly at her president's golf time. Those 15-minute windows were our lifeline. "How are you, sweetheart?" she'd ask, voice artificially bright. "Good, Mom. How are you?" "Oh, keeping busy. The new Rose standards are lovely." We spoke in code. I'd hear Karen's voice in the background, and Mom would quickly hang up. The calls got shorter. Sometimes she wouldn't answer. During sophomore year, I drove home for Thanksgiving. The neighborhood felt like a mausoleum. Mom had lost weight, clothes hanging loose. She wore long sleeves despite the warm house. When she reached for potatoes, I saw the edge of a bruise. "Mom, don't," she whispered, glancing toward Karen's house across the street. "Please, Emily, just don't." I spent the visit documenting everything: photos of bruises, recordings of Karen's tirades at meetings, building a case file. Back at school, I threw myself deeper. I interviewed survivors, volunteered at crisis lines, learned about gaslighting, financial abuse, all the terms that explained Karen's grip on Sunny Oaks. Knowledge became my armor. My professor, Dr. Sarah Winters, became my mentor. "This is personal, isn't it?" she asked after one intense paper. I nodded. "You can't save a neighborhood that doesn't want saving," she said gently. "But you could be ready." So I prepared. I researched Oregon HOA laws, filed public records requests, made contacts with attorneys who specialized in board misconduct. I found forensic accountants who could trace dues. My junior year, the calls stopped. When I drove home unannounced, I found Mom in her bedroom, curtains drawn, prescription bottles everywhere. Karen says I'm stressed, she told me slurred. The pills help me sleep. I photographed everything. Another piece of evidence. Senior year, I started my internship at a women's crisis center. I met survivors who'd escaped situations like Mom's. Their stories gave hope and heartbreak. The leaving is the most dangerous time, one told me. I graduated summa cum laude, enrolled in a master's, and took the job at Haven Ridge in Portland. Close enough to respond, far enough Karen couldn't monitor me. I opened a secret account in Mom's maiden name, deposited money slowly, found a safe apartment, documented every HOA violation, Karen's suspicious property transfers, shell companies' patterns, screaming money laundering. I was building two cases, one for Mom's freedom, one for Karen's downfall. I just needed Mom to say the word help. Instead, I got an email from Karen's board account. Stop interfering, or there will be consequences. She knew. She discovered my research or the email to Mom. The game changed. I forwarded it to my attorney, Samantha Ruiz. This is intimidation, Sam said. Document everything. That evening I tried calling Mom. Karen answered. She doesn't want to talk to you. I have a right to speak to my mother. You have no rights here. You're poisoning the neighborhood. The silence was dangerous. Stay away, Emily. I won't warn you again. I couldn't stay away. I hired a private investigator paid with savings. What he found was staggering. Karen's HOA presidency was a front. Dues were funneled into shell companies' properties, bought, sold at losses, money from offshore accounts disappearing. The FBI had been watching her for 2 years building a case, but they moved slow. Mom didn't have time. I created a new email, reached out through Susan, who still attended the wine nights. Your mom looks terrible, Susan whispered on a clandestine call. She's lost weight, seems disconnected. The pills, I explained. Be ready when the time comes. I assembled a team without Mom knowing. Sam, the attorney, Dr. Winter, security consultant, financial forensic expert. Every Thursday, I drove from Portland, park blocks away, observed, photographed license plates patterns. One Thursday in late October, I saw Mom in her garden, the only thing Karen still allowed her to tend. She sat on the bench and cried. That night, I drafted the extraction plan. We would move fast, file emergency orders, freeze accounts, coordinate with FBI. I started seeing a therapist myself. You're planning revenge? He asked. Maybe both, I admitted. It's human. I was willing to pay the price. In November, I sent Mom one final encrypted email. I have everything ready, safe, place, money, lawyers, protection. Just say yes, and I'll come get you, please, before it's too late. The response came from Karen's account 3 days later. Come to the house on December 15th. We need to discuss your mother's future. It was a trap, but also an opportunity. December 15th was my 22nd birthday and Mom's wine night. The house will be full of witnesses. I wore a wire, downloaded recording apps, prepared for war. As I drove toward my childhood home that night, listening to the party sounds, I knew only one of us would win this war, and I was done losing. The sound of shattering would brought me back. Karen stood in my destroyed doorway, chest heaving, face twisted with rage. The sirens were 2 minutes out. You called them, she said, eerily calm. You stupid little girl. I kept my phone raised, still connected to 911. They're almost here, Karen. Just leave. She laughed, bitter. Leave? This is my neighborhood. You're the one who doesn't belong. Mom's voice drifted up, uncertain. Emily, what's that noise? Your daughter, Karen called back, is destroying our community. Footsteps on the stairs. Mom appeared behind her. The wine night ladies clustered on the landing, glasses in hand, faces shifting from confusion to horror. Karen, what have you done? Mom's voice was small, staring at the splintered frame. What have I done? Karen whirled. Your ungrateful daughter has been plotting, sending emails, investigating the board, try to turn you against me. You broke down her door, Susan said, stronger than Mom. She locked it. Karen snapped, as if that explained everything. In my HOA, she locked her door against the president. The sirens were right outside, red and blue lights painting the walls. Mom, I said steady, tell them what you saw, tell them the truth. Mom looked between us, tears forming. This was the moment. Karen saw it too. Linda, baby, she switched to honeyed tone. She's confused, you know how dramatic she gets. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Police, open up. The pounding on the front door made everyone jump. Martha ran downstairs. Karen grabbed Mom's arm. Don't do this. You broke down my daughter's door. Mom whispered, staring at the grip. Our community, Karen corrected, tightening. Everything I do is for this neighborhood. Let go of her. I stepped forward. 2 officers appeared at the top of the stairs, Martha leading. They took in the scene, destroyed door. Karen's gripped me, backed against the wall, cluster of frightened women. Ma'am, I need you to step away. The older officer said, hand on his belt. Karen released slowly. Officers, this is a neighborhood matter. My resident has been unstable. She broke down my door. I interrupted, pointing at the evidence. I called 911 when she was trying to break in. I was afraid. She's lying, Karen said smoothly. Ask my vice president Linda, tell them. Everyone looked at Mom. She stood, frozen wine glass, trembling. Linda, Susan said softly, tell them what we all heard, the pounding, the shouting. Mom looked at me, and I saw the woman. She used to be the strong one who raised me alone, who taught me to stand up. She broke down the door. Mom said, voice growing stronger. My daughter was scared, and she broke down her door. I heard it all. We all heard it. Karen snarled, lunging. The officers moved fast. Within seconds, Karen was on the ground, cuffed, one knee on her back, reading her rights. She screamed about betrayal, about everything she'd done for the neighborhood, about how we'd regret this. Ma'am, are you hurt? The younger officer asked me. No, he didn't get to me. You arrived just in time. As I hauled Karen to her feet, she looked at Mom one last time. You're nothing without me, nothing. Mom straightened, lifted her chin. We'll see about that. They took her away in cuffs, her expensive polo, torn, her carefully maintained image shattered. Neighbors gathered on lawns, watching the HOA president shoved into the police car. After statements after the wine night, ladies rallied around Mom with fierce protectiveness after the house finally went quiet. Mom and I sat in my destroyed room. I'm sorry, she whispered. It's not over, I told her, taking her hand. This was just the beginning. He'll make bail, she said, squeezing back. And then we fight with everything you've been preparing. I know you have a plan, Emily. You always do. I smiled for the first time that night. As a matter of fact, I do. Karen made bail within 12 hours, just as I predicted, but those 12 hours were enough. While she sat and holding Sam Ruiz, filed emergency protective orders, froze accounts, petition for exclusive use of the neighborhood common areas. My private investigator delivered the complete file on Karen's financial crimes to Sam and his FBI contact. By the time Karen walked out, her world was already crumbling. She can't come within 500 feet of either of you, Sam explained as Mom and I sat at her downtown office. The protective order was temporary, but with the evidence, making it permanent would be easy. Mom had barely slept, but she looked more alive than I'd seen in years. The fog of the pills Karen had convinced her doctor to prescribe was clearing. What about her control of the board? Mom asked. She'll use dues to bury us in legal fees. Sam smiled. That's where things get interesting. Emily's research uncovered the smoking gun the FBI has been looking for. I pulled out the files I compiled for months. 3 of the community improvement projects were purchased with cash from offshore accounts, then sold at massive losses to shell companies Karen controls. It's textbook embezzlement. The FBI wanted to meet. Mom's hand found mine under the table. Do it, she said firmly. Set up the meeting. Over the next 3 weeks, we build our case methodically. I took family leave from Haven Ridge, focused entirely on the battle. We moved Mom to a secure apartment, changed her number, surrounded her with support therapists, advocates, and a surprisingly fierce protection of the wine night ladies. Susan, Martha, and the others became Mom's constant companions, creating a schedule so she was never alone. They'd all witnessed Karen's meltdown, and their testimony would be crucial. We should have seen it sooner, Susan told me one evening sorting documents. The signs were all there. Abusers are expert manipulators, I reminded her. Karen fooled everyone. The FBI investigation revealed more. Karen's HOA was built on fraud, bribery, and money laundering for an Eastern European syndicate. She'd used legitimate dues to wash dirty money, taking a hefty cut. Your research cracked this wide open, Agent Jennifer Torres told me. We've been circling her for years, but you found the connections. Mom's divorce from the board attorney, David Winters, began unwinding finances. It was complex, but Mom had one advantage: the inheritance Karen had invested created a paper trail of fraud. She forged your signature on several documents, David explained. That's criminal on top of everything. Mom started attending a support group for HOA abuse survivors. I went with her to the first meeting, watching her hands shake as she introduced herself. My name is Linda, and the president has been abusing her power for 10 years. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. The group surrounded her with understanding. Meanwhile, Karen was spiraling assets, frozen board under federal investigation, reputation in tatters. She hired the most expensive defense attorney in Portland, but even Richard Blackstone couldn't spin the evidence. Karen tried to contact Mom through her lawyer, offering to drop all fines if Mom refused to cooperate with the FBI. Tell her no, Mom said without hesitation. I want her to pay. The local news picked up the story. Prominent HOA president charged with domestic-style control and financial crimes. Karen's country club revoked her membership. Business partners distanced themselves. The empire she'd built on intimidation and fraud was collapsing. But I knew Karen wouldn't go down without a fight. She'd lost control, and for a woman like her, that was intolerable. Sam warned us to be vigilant. Corner Karens are the most dangerous. Don't go anywhere alone, give her no opportunity. 3 weeks before trial, we got word Karen had liquidated a hidden account, $500,000 in cash she'd kept off the books. She'd also been spotted meeting with a private investigator known for dirty work. She's planning something, Agent Torres warned. We're increasing surveillance, but be extra careful. Mom moved in with me temporarily. We hired private security. Every precaution we could take, we took. We knew the trial would be our battlefield, but we had to make it there first. Are you ready for this? I asked Mom the night before our first deposition. I've been ready for years, she replied. I just didn't know it until now. Tomorrow we would begin the legal process of destroying Karen Brennan, and I would make sure she lost everything, just as she tried to take everything from us. The courtroom was packed on the first day of trial. Karen sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, trying to project the image of a wrong community leader, but I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw clenched when Mom and I entered. Richard Blackstone, known for aggressive tactics, began his opening. The prosecution will try to paint my client as a monster, but Karen Brennan is a dedicated president, a pillar of Sunny Oaks, who is being targeted by a vindictive resident and a mother seeking financial gain through board divorce. I felt Mom tense, but she kept her head high. We'd prepared for the character assassination. ADA Michelle Rodriguez stood up next. She was relentless. Ladies and gentlemen, we will show you evidence of systematic abuse, financial fraud, and a pattern of control that trapped Linda Parker in a prison of fear for over a decade. You'll hear testimony from witnesses who saw Karen Brennan break down a door to attack a resident. You'll see financial records proving she stole hundreds of thousands from neighborhood dues. And you'll hear from Linda herself about years of psychological and power abuse. The first week was dedicated to the door incident charges. Susan testified about the night of my birthday, describing the sound of splintering would Karen's rage my terror. Martha corroborated every detail. The other wine night members took the stand one by one, painting a picture of a tyrannical president finally caught. It was my turn. State your name for the record, Emily Parker. Blackstone tried to rattle me. Isn't it true you've harbored resentment against Mrs. Brennan since your mother joined the board? I harbored fear, I corrected. Resentment came later, after she isolated her from everyone who loved her. You're a psychology professional, aren't you? Studied manipulation and control. I studied how to recognize abuse, yes. So you knew exactly what to say to make my client look guilty. I met his gaze steadily. I didn't need to make her look guilty. The broken door did that. The bruises on my mother's arms did that. Her own actions did that. Blackstone pulled out my emails. You wrote, and I quote, "I'll make her pay for what she's done." Sounds like revenge to me. It sounds like justice, I replied, and we're getting it through legal channels, not power abuse, unlike your client. Mom's testimony was the hardest to watch. She detailed years of escalating control, the financial manipulation, the forced medication, the isolation from friends when Rodriguez asked her to describe the physical intimidation. Mom's voice shook, but didn't break. It started small, grabbing my arm too hard, pushing me against walls, always where the bruises wouldn't show. She was careful about that until recently. What changed recently? Emily was investigating her business. She was losing control. And when Karen loses control, Mom lifted her sleeve, showing the jury the photographed bruises. Blackstone's cross-examination was brutal, questioning her mental health, bringing up the pills, suggesting she was unreliable, but Mom held firm. Yes, I took those medications because the president convinced doctors I needed them, because it was easier to control me when I was sedated. The financial crimes portion was where our preparation paid off. The forensic accountant walked the jury through Karen's embezzlement scheme with clear, damning precision. FBI agent Torres presented evidence of connections to organized crime. The paper trail was undeniable. Then came the moment we'd been waiting for. Rodriguez stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present People's Exhibit 47, an audio recording from the night of December 15th. I've been wearing a wire, but more importantly, my phone had recorded when Karen broke down the door." The courtroom fell silent as my terrified voice filled the room, the 911 operator's calm responses, Karen's threats and profanity, the sound of wood splintering. But the most damning part was what the enhanced audio picked up: Mom's laughter from downstairs, continuing even as her daughter screamed for help. Then Karen's words, clear as day. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Sending those emails, trying to turn your mother against me." It was an admission she'd violated privacy, monitored communications, and her attack was premeditated retaliation. Blackstone tried to object, claiming the recording was obtained without consent, but Oregon was a one-party consent state. The recording stood. Karen took the stand in her own defense against Blackstone's advice. Her ego wouldn't let her stay silent. She painted herself as a dedicated leader brought down by ungrateful residents, claiming every accusation was exaggerated or fabricated. Then Rodriguez began her cross-examination. "Mrs. Brennan, you say you never hurt your vice president. How do you explain the medical records showing repeated injuries? Linda is clumsy. She falls into door frames shaped like finger marks." The jury wasn't buying it. I could see disgust, disbelief, growing anger on their faces. "And the financial records showing you transferred dues from accounts without knowledge? I managed the neighborhood finances. She trusted me to handle things. By forging her signature?" Karen's composure cracked. "Everything I did was for this community. I gave them everything." "You gave them fear," Rodriguez shot back. "You gave them prison in their own neighborhood." The closing arguments were powerful, but the verdict felt inevitable. We waited 3 hours while the jury deliberated 3 hours that felt like 3 years. On the count of assault in the second degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of domestic-style power abuse, we find the defendant guilty. On 3 counts of financial fraud, we find the defendant guilty. The federal charges would be tried separately, but this was enough. Karen's face went white as the judge revoked her bail and ordered her into custody immediately. As they led her away in cuffs, she turned to look at us one last time. The hatred in her eyes was pure poison, but underneath it I saw disbelief that we'd actually won. The judge's gavel came down with finality. "Karen Brennan, you are hereby sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for financial fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. This sentence will run concurrently with your 15-year state sentence for assault and power abuse." 20 years. Karen would be in her 70s before parole. Her legal team filed appeals, but with the mountain of evidence, everyone knew they were motions. The FBI connected her to 3 more shell companies' investigators in 2 other states' open cases. Her HOA empire collapsed within weeks. Properties, seized assets, liquidated to pay restitution. The president's estate, where Mom had been a prisoner for so long, was sold at auction. We watched from across the street as movers hauled away the furniture, the artwork, all the symbols of Karen's facade. "How does it feel?" I asked Mom. "Free," she said simply. "I feel free." The Boer divorce was finalized while Karen was in prison. Mom got everything that mattered: her maiden name back, her dignity, and a chance to rebuild. We used settlement money to buy a small townhouse in Portland close to my work. Mom planted a new garden, filling it with the wildflowers Dad used to bring her. She returned to banking, starting entry level at a credit union, happy to have her own money, her own life. Therapy continued for both of us. Mom joined a support group that became her anchor, women who understood because they'd walked similar paths. Susan and the wine night ladies remained steadfast friends, driving down once a month for real conversation, no more pretending everything was perfect while darkness lurked across the street. 6 months after the trial, Mom started dating again, a gentle widower named Robert who owned a bookstore. He moved slowly, respecting her boundaries. When he proposed 3 years later, she said yes, but kept her apartment. "I need my own space," she explained, and Robert understood completely. I returned to school, completing my doctorate in clinical psychology with a specialization in coercive control and HOA abuse recovery. Dr. Winters became my mentor and colleague. My dissertation on neighborhood power abuse and financial control was published, helping other professionals recognize the signs we'd almost missed. At Haven Ridge, I developed a program for HOA survivors, combining therapy with legal aid, financial planning, security consultation, everything I'd wished we'd had sooner. The nightmares faded eventually, though certain sounds, pounding on doors, raised authoritative voices, could still make my heart race. But I learned to manage the triggers, to transform trauma into purpose. Karen tried to contact us once from prison, a letter full of manipulation and false remorse. We didn't respond. Sam had it added to her file in case she ever came up for early parole. She didn't deserve our forgiveness, and more importantly, we didn't need to give it to move forward. 5 years after that terrible night, I stood at a podium addressing a conference on neighborhood power prevention. In the audience, Mom sat in the front row, head held high, wearing a bright red dress, a color Karen had forbidden because it was too attention-seeking. "My name is Dr. Emily Parker," I began, "and I'm a survivor. My mother is a survivor. We're here today because we fought back, because we documented everything and refused to give up. But not everyone has those advantages." I talked about believing victims, recognizing subtle signs, creating safety nets. The person who terrorized our neighborhood for over a decade was a respected president, a pillar of the community. Abuse doesn't always look like what we expect. It hides behind closed doors, behind successful facades, behind careful manipulation that makes victims doubt their own reality. After my speech, a young woman approached, tears in her eyes. "Your story gives me hope. I'm still trying to leave my HO." I gave her my card, connected her with resources, became part of her support network. This happened often now, survivors finding me, letting me help the way others had helped us. Mom and I had dinner every Sunday, a tradition we'd rebuilt stronger than before. We'd cook, drink, wine, talk about everything and nothing. The relationship we'd lost during the Karen years had been restored. "Do you ever regret how it all happened?" Mom asked one evening, preparing lasagna, Dad's recipe. "I regret that it took so long," I admitted, "but I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret exposing her for what she was. She stole so much from us," Mom said quietly. "But not everything," I reminded her. "Not our future, not our ability to help others, not us." Looking back, that night when Karen broke down my door was both an ending and a beginning. It was the end of living in fear, of accepting abuse as normal, of staying silent to keep a false peace. And it was the beginning of reclaiming our lives, of finding strength we didn't know we had, of turning our worst neighborhood nightmare into our greatest victory. Karen Brennan thought she could break us. Instead, she taught us we were unbreakable. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share your thoughts. Your experiences matter, and together we can continue these important conversations.